Hello, chat. What's good? Getting you guys situated. Actually, let's do this really quick. You guys get to see outside. Very nice. So, how's everyone's day going? I hope well. We're going to be reading chapter 10 through chapter 13 today. And first, we're going to put on gloves. And remember, to put on a glove, you kind of want to tuck your thumb. Not like you're throwing a punch. You keep your thumb outside your fingers so you don't break your thumb. But when you put on a glove, you want to tuck your thumb. Gloves are on. So, while we talk about what happened last week, let's stir the pot, as they say. So we left off with the Joseph bell ringing and everyone running to the Abbey walls because the rats were running towards Redwall Abbey. So that's where we left off. And so everyone's running towards the wall. Where we started was Clooney had a bad dream, but before that, let's look. We'll switch hands. So Clooney was having a nightmare. He was visited by a spirit. And before that, Brother Matthias was telling everyone with Sister Constance about what was going on and saying they should all pay attention. And she roared a bit. And then lastly, two rats came to the wall, or a rat came to the wall for Brother Rufus. Let's make sure that's correct. Yep, Brother Rufus and Brother George. Perfect. Good job, chat. We got that. Alright, and so we're about to dive into what seems to be a possible fight between the peaceful Abbey Mice of Redwall and Clooney the Scourge and his horde. Let's get started. I don't have my towel out here today. We're washing stuff, so I'm going to dry it on my shirt so I can touch the pages. Here's the picture. We have like what looks to be the Abbey gates. Clooney's army halted at the sound of the Joseph bell. As the dust settled, Fangburn looked to his leader for approval. They're ringing that bell again, big bell again, Chief. Ha, ha. Maybe they'll think it'll frighten us off. The warlord's eyes rested balefully on his scout. Shut your mouth, fool. If you done as I ordered, and come back and reported the way Chester Thief did, we might have been inside the Abbey by now. Fangburn slunk back into the ranks. He hoped Clooney had forgotten, but Clooney rarely forgot anything on a campaign. The element of surprise had been lost. Now, he must try another ploy, the show of force. The mere sight of a fully armed horde and had worked before. The mere sight of a fully armed horde had worked before. He had little doubt it would prove effective now. Ordinary peaceful creatures were usually panic-stricken at the sight of Clooney the Scourge at the head of his army. The rat was a cunning general, except the times when his mad rage took control of him. But what need of berserk fits for a bunch of silly mice? Clooney knew the value of fear as a weapon, and Clooney was a fearsome figure. His long, ragged black cloak was made of bat wings, fastened to the throat with a mole skull. The immense war helmet he wore had the pumils of a blackbird and the horns of a stag beetle adorning it. From beneath the slated visor in one eye glared viciously out the Abbey before him. Brian Jocks loves painting a picture. And so that's what he just did. He let us know how scary Clooney looked. And he does. He looks intimidating. His black coat, his mouse skull necklace, and his bat wings that make up the cloak. Very intimidating. Let's continue. Matthias's voice rang out, sharp and clear from the high parapet. Halt! Who goes there? Redtooth swaggered forward and took up the challenge in his chief's name as he called back to the walls. Look well, all creatures. This is the mighty horde of Clooney the Scourge. My name is Redtooth. I speak for Clooney, our leader. Constance's reply was harsh and unafraid. Then speak, you piece. Speak your piece. Sorry. Maybe I cursed too much. But we didn't curse. This stream is rated PG still. PG. Because Redwall is kind of violent. It's good to have a parent around. Silence hung upon the air, while Redtooth and Clooney held a whispered conference. Redtooth returned to the walls. Clooney the Scourge says he will not deal with badgers. He will only speak with the leaders of the mice. Let us in so that my chief may sit and talk to your chief. Redtooth dodged back at his request, was greeted by howls of derision and some loose pieces of masonry from the ramparts. These plump little mice were not as peaceful as they first looked. So they threw rocks at them for saying mean stuff to Constance. Rats looked to Clooney, but he was eyeing the abbot, who had joined Constance and Matthias. They appeared to be consulting quietly. Clooney watched tensely. There seemed to be a disagreement between the old mouse and his two advisors. They conferred a while, then Matthias came forward to the parapet. He pointed at Clooney and Redtooth with his staff. You there, and you also. My abbot will talk with you both. The rest must remain outside. A rumble of protest from the horde was silenced by a crack from Clooney's tail. He lifted his visor. We agree, Mouse. Let us in. But what about hostages for safe conduct? Hissed Redtooth. Clooney spat contemptuously. Don't talk fool's talk. Do you imagine a load of mice in funny robes could take me captive? Redtooth gnawed anxiously at his spitclaw. Maybe not, Chief. But you cast whether I over that badger. Clooney answered quietly with the side of his mouth. Don't worry, I've been watching her. A real big country bumpkin. No, these are mice of honor. They would sooner die than break their word to anyone. Leave this to me. As Clooney and Redtooth made for the gatehouse door, Constance shouted, Put down your weapons, rats. Throw off your armor and show that you come in peace. Redtooth sputtered angrily, Hell's teeth. Who does that one think she's ordering around? Clooney shot him a wary glance. Do as she says. Both rats took off their armor, placed it in a pile on the road. Matthias cried down to Clooney, If you are Clooney the Scourge, then we know of your tale. It is a weapon, therefore you must knot it tightly around your waist so that way it cannot be used. Clooney laughed mirthlessly. He squinted at Matthias and cracked his tail dramatically. Young mouse, he called. You do right to ask this thing, for you truly are looking at Clooney the Scourge. Having said this, he took his tail with his claws and pulled the poisoned warspike from its tip, tossing it into the armor pile. Clooney hitched his tail into a knot around his middle. Would you let us in, mice? You can see we're unarmed. Ponderously, the heavy gate inched open. The two rats passed through a bristling forest of staves. The gate slammed shut behind them. Clooney mentally estimated the walls to be immense thickness as he and Redtooth, ducking their heads, emerged from the tunnel-like archway into the Abbey grounds, where Constance and Matthias were waiting in the sunlight. The defenders followed. The two rats closed, menacing with their staves. Menacing them with staves. Matthias rapped a court command. Leave us, mice. Go back to your duties on the wall. Unhappy to leave the abbot unguarded, the mice hesitated to obey the order to withdraw. Clooney addressed Matthias scornfully. Here, mouse. Watch me shift him. Suddenly, he whirled upon the apprehensive creatures, the single eye rolling madly in its socket as Clooney bared claws and fangs, snarling, Ha ha! I've got the most powerful hunger for mice. You'd best get aloft those walls, ha ha! Clooney leaped into the air. The mice started scattered in panic. Constance stopped the proceedings with a loud, angry bark. Here now, enough of that, rat. You're here to talk with the abbot. Get along with you. switching over to Matthias. What just happened there is Redtooth and Clooney got past the Abbey defenses. And now they're meeting with the Abbot Mortimer. This is not good in my opinion. Seems like things are afoot. Alright, we're about halfway through this chapter. Matthias was glad he was walking behind the rats. He blushed with shame. Clooney had sent the defenders scattering. Excuse me, I burped. Matthias was glad he was walking behind the rats. He blushed with shame. Speaking of blushing with shame, I am blushing with shame. And I made chicken, Brussels sprouts, sweet potatoes, and regular potatoes for dinner lunch. And it was delicious. Clooney has sent the warriors scattering like butterflies in a whirlwind. Matthias was furious. The enemy now knew he was dealing with untrained and untested soldiers. As the party walked toward Cavern Hall, Clooney could sense hostility emanating from the young mouse, who flip-flopped behind him in overlarge sandals. Strange for one so young to be counted as a captain, he thought. Moreover, the little fellow didn't seem to fear him. But enough of that. Clooney would deal with him when the time came. Meanwhile, the big rats gazed upon his surroundings in secret admiration. What an astounding place. Astounding place. He followed himself a peak. He allowed himself a peek at the future. One day this would be Clooney's castle. He liked the sound of that. Scourged from attack, living off the fat of the land. In his mind's eye, he saw it all. These mice, those mice and the woodland creatures enslaved just to serve him, he would hold a sway as far as the eye could see. Power and end to his rovings, a dream some come true. King Clooney. Entering the abbey, the party stopped to make way for a pretty little field mouse bearing a tray. "Oh, Matthias," she said, "I thought some refreshments for you and..." "Thank you, Cornflower. Put them on the table," said Matthias abruptly. Redtooth nudged to Clooney. "Cornflower, eh? Satan's nose. She's a pretty little one for you." Clooney remained silent. He stood insolently watching Cornflower set the table in Cavern Hall. A pretty one indeed. The abbot indicated chairs. They all sat except Clooney, who lounged against the table using the chair as a footstool. He glared at Redtooth until he stood and waited alongside his chief. Idly, Clooney picked up a bowl of honeyed milk and sampled it. "Slop," he spat on the floor. The abbot folded his paws into the wide sleeves of his habit and stared impassively at the warlord. What do you want with Redwall Abbey, my son? Clooney kicked the chair over and laughed madly. As the echoes died around the room, his face went grim. Your son? Ha! That's a good one. I'll tell you what I want. Mouse, I want it all. The lot. Everything. Do you hear me? Matthias's chair clattered to the side as he sprang forward. Breaking free from the restraining paws of the abbot. Listen, rat, you don't scare me. I'll give you your answer. You get nothing. Do you understand that? Shaking with fury, Matthias allowed himself to be pulled back onto the chair. The abbot turned to Clooney. You must forgive Matthias. He is young and headstrong. And now, as to your proposal, I'm afraid it is out of the question. Should you or your army require medical attention, food, clothing, or help upon your way, you will find us only too willing to assist. Clooney immediately interrupted rudely by pounding on the table until the abbot was silenced. He pointed a claw at Red Claw. Read them the articles. Red Tooth held up a tattered parchment. He cleared his throat. These are the articles of surrender, to be obeyed by all creatures who come under the claw of Clooney the Scourge, or any of his commanders. 1. Surrender will be total and unconditional. 2. Clooney will execute the leaders of all who chose to oppose him. 3. All property conquered will belong solely to Clooney the Scourge. This includes homes, crops, land, and additionally all creatures dwelling on said property. They all shall be owned by Clooney. Thwack. Redtooth got no further. Unable to contain himself, Matthias set his staff ripping through the middle of the articles as the torn document floated to the floor. Redtooth launched himself at Matthias with a snarl. The rat was actually in midair when a huge blunt paw knocked him flat. He lay stunned with Constance standing over him. Why pick on a small mouse? Surely a big strong rat like you can deal with an old badger. Come on, try me for my size. It was only the timely intervention of Abbot Mortimer that saved Redtooth's life. Constance, please let the rat up. Much as I would like to see him getting his just desserts, you must remember we cannot break the law of hospitality in our abbey. Redtooth staggered, shakingly to his feet, backing warily away from the badger. You, Abbot Mouse, you have until tomorrow evening to give me your answer. Not normally given to anger, the abbot stared Clooney in the face, with his face a mask of cold fury. I will not need until tomorrow, rat. You can have your answer now. How dare you come here with me? How dare you come here with your robber band to read articles of death and slavery to me? I tell you that neither you nor your army will ever set paw or claw inside Redwall, not while I or my creatures have breath in our bodies to fight and resist you. This is my solemn word. Abbot Mortimer laying it down, saying, "Not like that." No, sir. Give me a second, chat. I've lost my place. It's going to take me a second. My eyes track stuff all over the place. That is my solemn word. Clooney sneered and turned on his heel, followed by Redtooth, who stamped out. On the stairs between Cavern Hall and the Great Hall, he stopped and turned, his cold voice echoing between both chambers. Then die, all of you. Every male, female, and young one, you have refused my terms. Now you will suffer punishment of Clooney. You will beg on your knees for death to come swiftly, but I shall make you torment loud and long before you die. Clooney says he's going to torture him. Abbey's got to put up a good fight. Let's go Redwall. It was then that Constance did something that creatures would speak of in years to come. Exerting the full strength of a female badger, she lifted the massive cavern hole dining table, a huge solid oak thing that no dozen mice could even move. Dishes clattered and food spilling. Constance heaved the table above her head, and her voice was a roar. "Get out, rats! Leave this abbey!" I'm wary of your voices. Hurry, before I go. Break the laws of hospitality and ask the abbot for pardon later. Go while you still have skulls. With the best grace he could muster, Clooney walked rather quickly up the stairs, followed by Redtooth, who laughed nervously. "Big country bumpkin, eh, Chief? We're more worried from you back there, and she would have thrown that table and crushed us." Who it was that... Remembering who it was that he had spoken to in this insolent fashion, Redtooth cringed, expecting Clooney to deal him a blow for his impudence, but nothing happened. Clooney was standing transfixed. Oblivious from all about him, Matthias and the abbot, who had followed him out, Clooney stared at the tapestry. Clooney was standing transfixed, oblivious to all around him, even Matthias and the abbot who had followed him out. Clooney stood staring at the tapestry. "Who is that mouse?" he gasped. Matthias followed the direction of the rat's gaze. He walked to the tapestry. "Do you mean this mouse?" Clooney nodded. Matthias, still with his pilot stress, declared proudly, "That is Martin the warrior. He founded our order. And I'll tell you something, Rat. Martin was the bravest mouse that ever lived." Shouldn't have said that. Thank you. Hello, Mr. Levant. It's me. I'll fill you in on what happened in this chapter in about one more page. Who is that mouse? Clooney gasped. Matthias followed the direction of the rat's gaze. He walked to the tapestry with his paw outstretched. Do you mean this mouse? Clooney nodded dumbly. Matthias, still with his paw outstretched, declared proudly, "This is Martin the warrior. He founded our order. And I'll tell you something else, Rat. Martin was the bravest mouse to ever live. If he was here today, he would take up his big sword and send you all and your bullies packing. Those of you he didn't chop up into crow meat." Much to everyone's surprise, Clooney allowed himself to be shown out. He was like one in a daze all the way to the gatehouse. A hush fell over the mice on guard as Clooney and Redtooth were led out into the road. Swiftly, the horde gathered around Clooney and his lieutenant. They waited orders. Redtooth called out, "Form up. Back to the church, everyone." Clooney marched automatically, shaking his head in disbelief. Martin the warrior? The mouse who was pursuing him in his nightmares? What did it mean? That's cool to confirm that this mouse that Clooney saw a couple chapters ago is now also being confirmed that it's Martin the warrior, because they said they look the same. We didn't know that yet. As Redtooth marched away, a voice hailed from the wall. He turned and looked upward. The torn articles, the parchment, wrapped around a fistful of rotting vegetables, splattered in his face. Livid with rage, he clawed the foul mess from his eyes and saw Constance leaning over the parapet with a wicked grin in the delight of her striped muzzle. The badger shouted mockingly, "Don't forget to call again, Rat. I'll be delighted to see you. We got some unfinished business that I'm looking forward to settling. Just you and me, Redtooth." Before the rat could reply, she vanished from sight. Constance is cool. She is one wicked tough lady. Here's the next chapter. So let's go over that last chapter. Oh my goodness. You know what? I can do this. When I want to read chat, and then I'll do that. Chat, let's go make some tea, actually. Well, let me just grab some water. How about just water? I'll grab water. I'll be right back, chat. I'll grab some water, something to drink, so that way I can keep reading. Got a Gatorade. Something to drink. Okay, let's go over that. We started with Redtooth and Clooney and they took off all their armor and their poison tip uh, tail, and they went inside the abbey after they negotiated first to make sure that the abbot would actually meet with them. And then after they negotiated, they took off all their armor and stuff, and they walked through the abbot gate, open for a second, and then shut instantly. Clooney scared some of the guards and found out that they were all newbies and didn't know how to fight yet. And then Redtooth tried to kill Matthias, and Constance almost killed Redtooth for it. So, and then they kicked them all out, and then at the very end, Constance nailed Redtooth in the face with like this rotting cabbage filled with like dirt and mud and maybe like a rotting carrot and a tomato and just all that kind of mixed up into it and thrown at this guy, and he just got splattered in the face with some rotting vegetables. Probably no rocks, because Constance wouldn't do that. She doesn't want to kill him yet. Alright. Later that evening, Brother Alf was patrolling his stretch of wall when he noticed a movement in the ferns at the edge of Mossflower Wood. Constance and Matthias were summoned hastily. They peered over the parapet. Brother Alf pointed to where he had seen the ferns moving. Over there, to the right of that aspen. Look, they're moving again. Matthias had better nocturnal vision than either of his friends and was able to recognize the forlorn creature rolled on the grass. It's Ambrose Spike. He's hurt. Quick, let's get down there. Hold fast, Constance warned. It might be a trap. Matthias was loath to hang on while a creature was lying injured within his sight, but he had to heed his friend's advice. Constance is right. A lot of time in places of conflict, when people are fighting, if you're a Red Cross person or someone that just is a doctor, you can get lured in. There might be calls to say we need an ambulance here, but there's artillery fire coming in. Then you lose an ambulance, EMTs, and whoever you were trying to save. So that's what Constance is afraid of. A booby trap. We can't leave poor Ambrose there, lying there out there. Constance, he'll die. We've got to do something. The badger sat down with her snout between her paws. Yes, we got to think. Anyone got any ideas? Anyone got an idea? The two mice joined her. Hardly had Matthias sat down when he leapt up again. I've got it. Stay here. I'll be back in a tick. Brother Alf watched the little figure flip-flopping off. He gave a sigh and shook his head. What do you suppose our Matthias is up to? The badger smiled affectionately. More and more she was coming to trust Matthias's natural skill as a leader and tactician. Don't fret, Brother Alf. Whatever it is, you can bet your habit it'll be on an original Matthias gem. The young mouse has got more in his head than a pile of acorns. Brother Alf looked out at the still form in the grass. It may be too late. Ambrose isn't even twitching. Look, he's not rolled up in a ball anymore. Further speculation was curtailed by the appearance of Matthias. With him were half a dozen moles. The leader glanced out at the hedgehog. He scratched some hasty calculations on the wall with his claw and then turned to Matthias. Oi! I think we can get you edge pig back, sir. You get us out there on the gate and sat and watching. Now the moles talk with very broken English. It's like rural South. There's just so many vowels that are missing, but there's consonants everywhere. Turning to his team, the Formal, which was his official title, began discussing tunnel width coupled with reverse pickling drag, reverse prickle drag, toward traction and all other specialist details that are routine to the advantaged qualified tunnel mole. Mouthful. They are talking about how to get the dimensions correct so that way when they drag the hedge pig back, as the moles would say, Brother Ambrose, Brother Ambrose. Right, what are we waiting for then? Let's go, said the badger. Silently they slid outside the green painted iron door. Matthias strained his eyes anxiously to see if there were signs of life in the hedgehog. He still lay about 150 mouse paces from where they stood. The moles unraveled a rope sling. Furthermore, four mole stood watching as two of his team started the dig. Matthias looked on in wonderment. 1 minute they were above ground. A moment later there was vertical shower of loam and topsoil as they vanished beneath earth. Nature's own technicians. In a trice they were back, moist snouts pointing from the excavation. They made the ground report to the Formal. He's be nice and softer. Ain't no rock, no root, no to stop us, none. Straight fur, we make me thinking. Satisfied, Formal moved towards the test hole with the rest of his team. Oi, dig ahead, you white and Wilkins, Graffa and Mage, follow up a showing. It's basically another language. Don't worry if you can't understand it. I'll go over it again right now. Oi, you, all, dig ahead. You'll be wondering, you'll be whiting Workins, and he gives two names, Gaffer and Marge. They'll be working on widening the tunnel. Follow up Shorin. and whatever that means in regards to taking care of the mind. He tugged his snout respectfully to Matthias and Constance. You gentle beast, bide, bide by here till us back. Another quick shower of soft, dark earth and the moles were lost to view beneath the ground surface. Constance sniffed the breeze as Matthias turned his ears to the nighttime woodland sounds. They watched the ground humping in continuous hillock that progressed farther as the moles moved towards Ambrose Spike. So you're saying the ground has little humps in it? You can kind of tell where the moles are digging. It's kind of cool to see. Matthias did a little shuffle of excitement. Look! They've come up right upon poor old Ambrose. My word, what splendid moles. Good heavens. It's vanished completely. They must have him inside the tunnel. In a surprisingly short time, the tunnels were back. Emerging from the hole, they carried the hedgehog in the rope sling slung across their backs, refusing any help from the badger or mouse. Formole merely tugged his snout. Nay, nay, Ewans, get your paws dirtied. Proud people. Proud people. As swiftly as possible, Ambrose was hurried to the Abbey infirmary and sickbay. He was attended by the abbot himself. A hasty diagnosis revealed the hedgehog was suffering from a long, jagged wound that ran from the back of his ear to the tip of his paw. Brother Alf nodded sympathetically. That's probably what caused old Ambrose to pass out. Pain and loss of blood must have traveled a fair way in that condition. Do you think he'll live, Father Abbot? The abbot chuckled quietly. He cleaned the long ugly wound and applied a poultice of herbs. No causes for alarms, Brother Alf. Ambrose Spike is made of leather and needles, though as a bowler, this old ruffian is tough as a boulder. This old ruffian is. Look, he's beginning to come around already. Sure enough, after some peculiar grunts and much curling and uncurling, the hedgehog opened his eyes and looked her out. Oh, my aching ear! Father Abbot, you wouldn't see the poor son of the Spike suffering without a drop of last October's nut brown ale to his parched gullet, he pleaded. So, Ambrose, also known as Spike, just said, Father Abbot, could I get some beer since I'm hurt? All the creatures laughed aloud with delight and relief at seeing their old friends alive and well once again. Matthias was astonished at the amount of nut brown ale that Ambrose supped before he deemed himself fit enough to make a report. So he likes his booze. Let's take a drink with our friend Mr. Ambrose Spike. Ah, that's better. Now let me see. I did as you asked, gave as many creatures fair warning as I could. The Joseph Bell helped a great deal to warn everyone. Well, to cut a long story short, it must have been near noon when I stopped at Vol Bank. I told the Vols the bad news, and blow me if that little ninny Colin Vol didn't go to shrieking and screaming all over the place as how they were all to be murdered in their beds. Believe me, there was no way of silencing the young thing. Anyway, his noise must have alerted a pack of rats who were out foraging because you could say knife. Before you could say knife, they were upon us. There was such a gang of them that I couldn't do anything. I had to curl up. They carried off young Colin and his mom and dad, but try as they would, there was no laying claws on Ambrose Spike. No, as there was no laying paws on Ambrose. No, sir. The one thing they had to go with me, a point of an iron church railing stabbed away at me. The devil did. They reckoned I was dead, said I was too spiky to eat. So they dragged the full family off, and I lay still until the coast was clear. I made it far as Mossflower, and that's all I can remember. That was... Is there any more left in that jug? The wound's giving me a jip. I need ale for medicinal purposes, Father Abbot. Medicinal purposes. Matthias groaned and hung his head in despair. The Vol family taken captive, death or slavery was all that the wretched creatures could look toward now. Emboldened by the rescue of the hedgehog, Matthias was about to suggest that he and Constance, together with some hand-picked helpers, venture to undertake a rescue mission to Church Ninians. It was as if the abbot and Constance both read his thoughts at the same time. Constance and the abbot are like twins of the mind. Abbot Mortimer sighed and shook his head at Matthias. The badger was more valuable. Matthias, forget it. Abandon any hopes you have of snatching the Vol family from under Clooney's nose. Imagine it. A few of us were going up against several hundred armed rats in their own camps. Ridiculous. A fat lot of good we'd be as defenders of Redwall with our heads fixed on Clooney's standard. Matthias, you're a very brave young mouse, so please try to set an example to the rest of us by not becoming a foolish or dead one. On reflection, Matthias could see the wisdom of the Badger's Council. That was Constance who said that to him. Long after they had retired for the nights, he sat up thinking. 100 mad ideas pounded through his brain, each one wilder than the last. Feeling at a loss, he wandered up into the great hall and stood in front of the tapestry. Without consciously realizing it, he found himself talking to Martin the warrior. Oh, Martin, what would you have done in my place? I know that I'm only a young mouse, a novice. not even a proper Redwall member yet. But once you were young too, and I know what you would have done. You would have buckled on your armor, picked up your mighty sword, gone down to the church, and battled the rats until they were released the voles or perished beneath your blade. But alas, those days are gone. I have no magic word to aid me, only the advice of my elders and betters, to which I must listen. Matthias sat down upon the cool stone floor. He gazed longingly up at Martin the warrior, so proud, so brave. What a dashing figure he cut. Looking down at himself in his baggy green robes and oversized sandals, Matthias felt hot, tears of shame. But alas, those days are gone. I have no magic sword to aid me, only the advice of my elders and betters, to which I must listen. Matthias sat down on the cool stone floor. He gazed longingly up at Martin the warrior, so proud, so brave. A dashing figure he cut, looking down at himself in his green baggy robes and oversized sandals. Matthias felt hot tears of shame and frustration spilling from his eyes and dripping on his young whiskers. Unable to stop himself, he wept freely. The touch of a gentle paw on the back of it, on his back, caused him to look around. It was cornflower. Matthias wished he were dead. He quickly turned away. Got an itch, chat. Give me a second. He quickly turned his face away, knowing she could see his tears. Cornflower, please go away, Matthias sobbed. The little field mouse, however, would not go. She sat down on the floor next to Matthias, taking the edge of her pinafore as she slightly wiped away his tears. It's something I think that goes on top of your dress. Or maybe just for girl abbesses. Not sure. For a little mouse, she had quite a bit to say. Matthias, do not be ashamed. I know why you cry and grieve. It is because you are kind and good, not a hard-hearted, pitiless rat like Clooney. Please listen to me. Even the strongest and bravest must sometimes weep. It shows that they have a great heart, one that can feel compassion for others. You are brave, Matthias. Already you have done great things. For one so young. I am only a simple country bred field mouse. But even I can see the courage and leadership in you. The burning brand shows the way, and each day your flame grows brighter. There is none like you, Matthias. You have the sign of greatness upon you. One day Redwall and all the land will be indebted to you. Matthias, you are a true warrior. Matthias, with his eyes dry and his head held high, stood up. He felt something. He felt himself stand taller than he ever had. He helped Cornflower to her feet and bowed to her. Cornflower, how can I ever thank you for what you have just said? You are a very special mouse. It is late now. Go and get some rest. I think I will stay here longer. The field mouse untied her headband. It was her favorite one, pale yellow, bordered with cornflowers, after which she was named. She tied it to Matthias's arm, the right one, just above the elbow, a maiden's colors for her champion warrior. Silently, she crept off. Matthias could feel his heart beating against his chest. He spoke to the image of Martin. Thank you, warrior. You spoke to me through Cornflower. You gave me a sign that I asked of. You gave me the sign that I asked of you. Let's look at the next chapter, chapter 12, while we recap. So, quite a bit happened there in that chapter. We had Mr. Ambrose Spike. He got a little buzzed, and he was like, okay, I'll tell you what happened. Because sometimes when you have tragedy, they call it post-traumatic stress disorder, or stress disorder, something like that. PTSD. I think everybody can have some. Just from what they've gone through in life. Semper Fi. And so they rescued Ambrose Spike, brought him over the wall. They got him drunk. Abbot Mortimer took care of his wounds. And then at the very end, Matthias and Cornflower had a moment in front of the image of Martin where Matthias was asking for advice from his leader in the past. And Cornflower was there to help him think about it. A touching moment. Okay, this next chapter is super short. Here we go. At the church of St. Ninian, Clooney sat in the wreckage of what had once been a pulpit. Redtooth, Darkclaw, Cheese Thief, and Fangburn lunged about at his feet on old burst hassocks. Clooney was in one of his strange moods again. He showed very little interest in the Captival family, merely ordering that they be kept under guard until he found time to deal with them. Most of his army slept in the choir loft or the lady chapel. The rest were posted at sentry duty outside. Continuously, his captains watched the warlord. Clooney's long tail swished restlessly. The single eye darted at a carved eagle holding a rotting lecture on its outspread wings. What thoughts occupied the dark, mischievous minds of Clooney the Scourge? Finally, he looked up and spoke. Go and get Shadow. Bring him here to me. Darkclaw and Fangburn scurried off to obey the command. Silently, the others waited, their eyes glinting in evil anticipation. The chief had a plan. Like all his schemes, it would be no better. There was no better general than Clooney when it came to strategy. Shadow had been with Clooney for many years. Nobody was sure if he was a rat or a weasel, or even a bit of both. He was very lithe and wiry, and his long center body was covered in sleek black fur. There was no doubt of another color in his coat. It was blacker than moonless night. His eyes were strangely slanted, black without brightness in them. Oh, the bugs are eating me up out here, guys. Oh, maybe not. Maybe that was just a hair growing in. Felt like a bug. Don't mind me. Shadow, is that you? The reply came like a whisper of wet silk across a smooth slate. Clooney, I am here. Why do you want Shadow? The captain shivered at the sound of the voice. Clooney leaned forward. You see the walls of the Abbey today? I was there. Shadow sees all. Tell me true. Could you climb them? No beast I know can climb these walls. Except you. Except me. Clooney gestured with his tail. Come closer then. I will tell you what must be done. Shadow sat on the top pulpit step. Clooney issued his orders. You will climb the Abbey wall. Many sentries patrol the top of the wall. Take utmost care. If you get captured, you are of no use to me. There's no point in one alone trying to attack the gatehouse. There's no point in one alone trying to attack the gatehouse and open the door. It's too well guarded, so forget the gate. Shadow, head over. Shadow gave no hint that Clooney had inadvertently read his mind. He remained motionless as Clooney continued. Shadow gave no hint that Clooney had inadvertently read his mind. He remained motionless as Clooney continued. Once you have scaled the wall, make for the Abbey Door. Should it be locked for the night, you will use your skill to open it without any noise. It is vital you get inside. The first room you will find yourself in is the main one. The mice call it the Great Hall. Walk in, turn around, and the left you will find, and on the left wall facing you, there's a long tapestry covered in pictures and designs. Note carefully, at the bottom right-hand corner of the tapestry is a picture of a mouse dressed in an armor, leaning on a big sword. I want it. Cut it, rip it, tear it, but get it to me. I must have it. Do not come back without it. Shadow. Puzzlement was written on the faces of the four captains who overheard these orders. A picture of a mouse? Clooney had never been known as a collector of pictures. His captains are smelling something very fishy. Like, is this guy still worthy to lead us? Or is there a mutiny about to happen? Fangburn whispered to Cheese Thief, what use is a picture of a mouse to the chief? Clooney heard. He came to the edge of the pulpit, grasping the sides of the lectern, surveying his small congregation like some satanic minister. Ah, Brother Fangburn, let me explain. I'll tell you why it is that you and all your kind will forever remain servants, while I shall always be the master. Did you not see the faces of those mice today? The mere mention of Martin the Warrior sends them into ecstasies. Don't you see? He is their symbol. his name means the same to those mice as mine does to the horde. In a different way, maybe, Martin is some sort of angel. I'm the opposite. Think for a moment. If anything were to happen to me, we'd all be a leaderless, raveless, headless mob. So, if that mice were to lose the most precious omen, the picture of Martin, we would, where would that leave them? Redtooth snapped his haunches and slapped his haunches. He rocked to and fro, snickering with uncontrollable glee. Brilliant, Chief. Diabolical. There'll be a crowd of terrified little mice without their wonderful Martin. Clooney's tail banged down on the riding lecture, smashing into several fragments. And that's when we'll strike. The powerful tail lashed backwards, wrapping itself around Shadow's body. He was dragged forward, face to face with his master. Clooney's rancid breath blasted into Shadow's face as he ground out the syllable, "Bring that pitcher back here to me. Do this and your reward will be great. When I sit on Abbott's chair in Redwall, Abbey, but fail me, and your screams will be heard far beyond the woodland and meadows. Clooney the Scourge has spoken." Well, that was quite a chapter. I'll show you guys next chapter. This is where we're going to stop today, at chapter 13. Excellent stream. Really good. We had somebody came by and said something. A couple people stopped by. Tons of fun. Suggestions. I don't know how to get suggestions yet on what to do differently, but we're working on it. That was a good chapter. We'll recap that tomorrow, and the only thing we'll say is Martin, the warrior, the spirit of Martin is having a great effect on these two forces fighting one another. On Matthias, Cornflower, and Clooney, the Scourge. Thank you, chat. It was a pleasure. See you tomorrow.